Good morning, First Parish in Cambridge. My name is Reverend Becky Sheble Hall, and I'm happy to be with you here in my new role as your pastoral care minister during the next few months while Reverend Adam is on medical leave. We are getting to know each other. I've Zoomed with your board and your pastoral care team and the racial equity team. I've joined the staff for lunch this week and gathered with others in the common last Sunday. You are good people, and your welcome has been gracious. A deep dive into your website tells me more. As I said before, it's clear you are a congregation that knows that church is not a building. You are a vibrant community of folks who are dedicated to learning about, witnessing to, and taking action against racism, inequity, and injustice in your world and mine. Your work on the eighth principle and climate change inspire me. Doing this work as a community, rather than showing up as an individual at a protest, speaks about how you integrate your faith into your activism. And I believe that helps to deepen your effectiveness and sustain your spirit. So go team, go. First Parish also offers opportunities to care for yourself and each other through spiritual practice and deep listening. There are those among you on the lay pastoral team who offer their time, ears, and hearts when you feel alone or in crisis. Parents gather to support each other. There are opportunities to be still together in meditation, and you share your beliefs and develop personal theology in small groups with soul matters. So why am I telling you all these things about yourself and your church, which you undoubtedly already know? Well, because ours will be a relationship about trust and care. And you should know that I care about you already. But also because there's a balance we all need to find between our works in the world and our work inside ourselves. I call it the sweet spot. And it's so important to find the balance, and it's so easy to lose it. These last few years, even before the pandemic, have been really hard on those of us who are affected by inequities in a way that moves us to action. And when we can't be in action, there's a tendency to stew instead of renew ourselves. Does that sound familiar? It is to me and my work as a chaplain and minister. Just last summer, I had to leave a beloved job at Chaplains on the Way, where we offered an outdoor ministry of presence and spiritual practices to unhoused and marginally housed in the community of Waltham, just down the road from you. The coming of COVID changed our work so drastically, both in terms of hours and what we offered, that over the last 14 months, I lost touch with my familiar. I'm familiar with making time to slow down in order to hear the still small voice within and the greater one that draws me near. Instead, I got the flipsies. The flipsies. Remember this summer's Olympics when that brave young gymnast, Simone Biles, had to withdraw from several events in order to care for her mental health? Later, she told us that she was experiencing the flipsies. Gymnasts get this sometimes, she says. It's when you're in the middle of a jump that you have done hundreds of times before, but suddenly you just can't figure out whether your head is up or down. So will you land on your feet or your head? Sounds pretty terrifying, doesn't it? Simone Biles said the condition is caused by stress, and it usually passes in a bit. But she withdrew from the events because she did not want to hurt herself or the team. She did not want to take the team down because of her loss with her familiar. And that's exactly how I felt. So after 10 years, 7 as the executive director, I stepped aside, leaving that ministry in the very good hands of others. I believe that our faith tradition may make us more susceptible than others to losing our balance. Our principles, which I love, call us to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. At the same time, we're called to promote justice, equity, and compassionate human relationships. Just those two alone set us up for a struggle in these times, not to mention the seventh principle and our current climate crisis. In reality, it's this awareness of inequity and the desire to be good stewards of our earth, which drew many of us to Unitarian Universalism in the first place. Or it may be why you stayed if you grew up in this tradition. Other religions have dogma and spiritual practices and ways to worship. You must kneel. You must be still. You must acknowledge that you are not alone. You must listen to the voice of God. You must do this. You must do that. And while some of this dogma is what many of us ran from, some of it, as you can hear, protects the sweet spot. In truth, we UUs are not as unique as we like to think we are. Father Richard Rohr, a Franciscan friar, writer, and teacher, founded the Center for Action and Contemplation many years ago in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He calls these two things, contemplation and action, the supreme art of any mature religion. I think he means that if a group of religious people want to sustain themselves and their religious tradition, they need to practice both. This is how he describes what I'm calling the sweet spot. When the inner is connected to the outer, when neither one of them is operating independently, but they both feed on each other. When your action feeds your soul life and your soul life is moving towards concrete caring for the world. Last summer, our religious liberal cousins, the UCC denomination, that's the United Church of Christ, adopted a resolution at the General Synod calling on their members to develop a contemplative approach to Christian activism. Contemplation without action fuels narcissism, it said, and action without contemplation is a recipe for bitterness and spiritual depletion. My friend Reverend Mott Carricker worked hard on that resolution. He is the Protestant chaplain at Brandeis University and the leader of a small startup UCC congregation in Waltham that focuses on spiritual practice and social justice work. Agape, it's called. You can Google it. If you stayed with me this far, you might be hoping I start teaching a spiritual practice you can try, a sort of how-to ending. But that's for another sermon or a very good topic for Zoom where we can share what works best for us. I still have a lot to learn, and we can learn a lot from each other. But what I will tell you is that a spiritual practice doesn't have to be complicated or hard to learn. Reverend Kim Crawford Harvey, the minister at Arlington Street and a professor of mine in seminary, taught me that anything you give your time and devotion to can become a spiritual practice. Anything you consistently set time aside for and try to devote your thoughts completely to can be your spiritual practice. In class, she shared that at one point when her children were young and she was working crazy hours, her spiritual practice became flossing her teeth for 3 minutes straight. Seriously, she focused completely on that and wouldn't let any other thoughts take her attention. And for some reason, this brought her joy and peace. Of course, yoga, meditation, prayer, reading sacred scriptures like the Bible, the Quran, a Mary Oliver poem, these are easily definable forms of contemplation. But so is standing silently, eyes closed, with your face up to the sun for 5 minutes, or swimming across a pond, or lighting a candle each evening and watching the flames bounce. Remember, time and devotion are the only requirements. So if you swim across that pond, but continue to be all upset and fester about a nasty comment your teenager spit at you, that might be good exercise, but it's not a spiritual practice. When I walk in the woods and that festering kind of thinking comes, I try to look up to the sky through the tops of the trees that surround me. Somehow that clears my head of anxiety and repetitive grumpiness and slows me into the peace those woods have to offer. Remember, the word practice in there means we aren't intended to be perfect at it. Just try. As my basketball coach always said, you can't make your foul shots if you don't practice. Friends, as we end our time together, I invite you to take a deep breath. Close your eyes if that feels okay, as I offer this short blessing. May you be well. May you find a way to care for the world outside of yourself. May you find a way to care for the world inside of yourself. And most importantly, may you find this sweet spot that balances them both. May all people be so blessed. Amen.